Today we bring on one of crypto Twitter's most successful gem callers, trend callers, and just general alpha finders here on the channel to explain one of the most exciting and little understood ecosystems in the entire space. Today, please welcome Ansem, aka BLK Noise on Twitter. Definitely, if you're not following him yet, make sure you give him a follow. The link is in the description. We have a long but very, very important interview here where we talk all about the market signals, alpha in general, but we also go super deep, walking through all the different parts of DeFi Kingdoms and helping understand how you can get up and running. Now, I want to be clear, I don't have a huge holdings in DeFi Kingdoms, but I've been very, very excited to see the GameFi movement that's been sparked here recently with DeFi Kingdoms, things like Magic and Treasure DAO, Crypto Raiders, and in general, this feels like a very hot sector of the market to be tracking. And I just wanted to say this episode is sponsored by the like button, so smash that like button and let's dive in. I guess we got to start with just the way you view the market. I found your Twitter, I feel like less than 2 months ago, but it was like just so packed with observations on the market. How do you just like approach the market? Like, what do you do in your day to start really getting insights on the market?
Well, I read a lot of stuff. So like trying to keep up with trends in crypto takes a lot of time because stuff changes so quickly. I know like earlier last year we had essentially the continuation of the DeFi trend from like Ethereum 2020. That was like the first like DeFi summer. And a lot of people were betting on in 2021 that all of those DeFi tokens were going to do really well and continue to outperform Ethereum throughout the year. And they did really well in like the first after Bitcoin's like first major sell-off in January. They did really well like that month into February. But after that, it was really the alternative like layer ones that were the main trade that year. And I would say like the way to keep pace with the market is really to try and be active, like in using everything. So if you were like actively on chain using Ethereum early in the year, you noticed like the fee increase and how difficult it was to be using the same applications that before people really had no issue with. So once you like realize like a problem like that, you have to find how the market is going to react to something like that. And the first reaction to that was Binance Smart Chain. And a lot of people pushed it aside because, oh, it's centralized, oh, we don't like CZ. Like a lot of people didn't really pay attention to it. But they did really well because they filled market need that other people were searching for. And so I really just like that. Like you just have to be on top of what's happening and what's changing and not be restrictive in your thinking. So never get stuck in one narrative, I would say. We try to be forward looking in what's going to happen in the future.
So I'll share a little bit because I'm like you. I'm a builder. I love products. To me, too expensive and too slow seems like a bad combination. However, I'm also having PTSD because I went through 2018 where we had Tron, we had EOS, we had IOTA, we had, insert the name, and they all were better, cheaper, faster, and they completely failed. And so
Right.
I was a little bit like when I saw people rushing to BSC, I was talking to all of my friends, and everyone was like, that's not even a real blockchain.
Exactly.
Fade it, And so to me, I just kind of got caught, I think, on the back foot with the alternative L1s. Why was it different this year, do you think, than last year? And does it have staying power?
I think in 2017, like there were alt layer ones, but there wasn't really much you could do on them really. So like we had the Ethereum ICOs and we had like EOS and other stuff like that, but it wasn't until this cycle that we really had decentralized finance and applications that like people were actually using and interacting with pretty frequently. And like the bridging between chains, like none of that existed. When I started trading crypto in 2017, like I was on Bittrex, like Bittrex. I don't know if you remember that.
That
Yeah,
was my first exchange actually.
exactly. Yeah, I was on Bittrex. Like I think the first coin I bought was like Digibyte with my Bitcoin. So like back then, I think the landscape was completely different. And we won't know. I don't think we'll really know how well they do with scaling until like probably like a couple years. We'll really see if like which ones are going to stay around and which ones have the technical like merit to them. But I do think it's a completely different landscape now than it was back then.
Yeah, and like with so much more like I guess you could just call it bullish momentum to the market. These alternative chains, people want to give them a shot because they're like,
Right.
well, we need it. Whereas, by the time Tron and EOS were really doing smart contracts and like had the ability to have applications, it was 2019 and nobody cared about crypto in general. So maybe it was a timing thing, but for whatever reason, you really have been aggressive in sort of pushing onto the new stuff, which I love, and I think is really really important in a market enjoyer. Where do you think the biggest trends you see are right now? Obviously, we're going to talk about DeFi Kingdoms, which you definitely were the first person I heard about this from, and it clearly was a significant project. What thought process got you to really see DeFi Kingdoms or anything like that as super legitimate?
Well, actually, it's weird because to me, the only reason I was really interested in DeFi Kingdom is because I played a lot of video games as a kid. So I was going through like the typical routine of whenever a new L1 pops up with a new fund or gets funded, there's obviously going to be a DEX, there's going to be a few apps, there are dApps on the chain. And you want to be the first mover to those because as that money flows into the system, if you're early, you're going to benefit from everybody moving if you move faster than them. So I tweeted, I was like, okay, so we have Trader Joe on AVAX, we have Radium on Solana. What else? And then we have like Luna and other L1s and the major dexes. But I was like, what do we have on Harmony? Because I had never used Harmony before. And some people replied, they were like Viper Swap. And then some people said DeFi Kingdom. And so I figured out how to bridge over to Harmony. The first dex I used was Viper Swap. And it was essentially just like another fork of basically every dex, like same UI, basically same thing. I had the farms with the LPs or whatever, with the high APRs because of course they were early. But I looked at DeFi Llama, which lists like all the dexes on Harmony, and I saw DeFi Kingdoms there. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to check out this one as well. And when I got to the app, it was like I had to make a character, and I was like, well, this is weird. This is more than just a dex. And then I got to the map, and when I saw the map, I was like, wait, I've never seen anything like this, basically in any dex. So I'm like clicking around, just trying to figure out where everything is. And I eventually found where the dex was, and I think that's when I bought Jewel. And had to figure out like how to do the liquidity pools and everything.
And did you bridge on chain or did you bridge through centralized exchange?
On chain, I think I like the official Harmony bridge. I think I bridged from Ethereum.
Okay.
Now I've been using Synapse. Synapse works really well. It's really fast. But yeah, so after that, I read the docs. And when they said, or they were laying out essentially that you're going to have heroes. Heroes are going to do quests. You're going to be able to level them up and then eventually play PvP. And for me, that clicked. I'm like, okay, that's just World of Warcraft. Like that's maybe like a very simplified version of it, but that's just World of Warcraft on blockchain. And I was like, well, there's nothing else really that exists like this. So that's what was really interesting to me. That's what got me to stick around over there.
So is the like I'm a big believer that gaming is just kind of eating everything, right? Like my first company I ever worked for when I was in college was making educational games. So it was using like casual games to teach language, and I'm sort of a big believer in gaming to kind of like remove the tricky parts of doing a lot of things in life, like whether that's like fitness or education or in this case DeFi, right?
Yep.
Do you think that the game and the pretty UI or the character building and these types of other types of mental triggers, is that going to be a vehicle in your mind to get more people using crypto in general?
So it's two things from my point of view. I would say the first, yes, the gamifying things I think has the ability to bring in more users. Because I think a lot of people external to crypto, they may not really care that much about decentralized finance unless it's something that really piques their interest. Like if you talk to like your average person, they're not talking about like inflation and how much money they can save like in a bank account or how they can beat that 7%. Average person is really not thinking about that. But I would say if you can gamify these things, as we saw with NFTs last year, which were huge in onboarding a lot of people to crypto that never really cared about crypto before. I think in the similar vein, if you have a game plus NFTs plus DeFi all in the same application, I think they have a huge advantage over other applications as far as onboarding new users and getting attention. And then the second thing I would say is the tokenomics of DeFi Kingdoms is quite different from other DeFi projects, in my opinion, because of how it's structured as a game. I don't know if you've ever played like World of Warcraft or other games like that, but these games have functioning in-game economies. And those in-game economies essentially will bring value to whatever the base token is of that application if they're designed properly. So with a lot of these other DeFi applications, they have governance tokens, but a lot of people aren't really using the governance tokens. Like the governance tokens are they're usually used by whales who are like trying to navigate their protocol to get them to do what exactly they want them to do. But with Jewel, it's used for summoning. Like you get rewards from quests that you can sell for Jewel. Like it's used to buy heroes, which are the NFTs in DFK. So a lot. And if you stake your Jewel in the bank, you get paid for like the people trading on the DEX. A percent of the fees go to those stakers. So it's really about the tokenomics of the game and also the gamifying it that brings in more people, I think.
So I would love to actually see and have you kind of walk through some of the elements of DeFi Kingdoms. But I did want to talk a little bit before that about just the market in general before we go deep in DFK. You were, for the last few months, you were the first person I saw, and maybe you weren't the first person, maybe you learned this from someone else, but you were the first person on my timeline that had categorized the FOAN tokens as sort of like the next hotspot. And in general, I think that people who are able to, obviously, if you're idealistic and you invest in Gala Games and Axie Infinity in 2020 or 2019, nothing beats those returns, right? You're getting like a quadrillion X or whatever. But if you're actually just sensing the market movements and saying, okay, well, I can't predict the future, but I know that enough liquidity following, X patterns, you're going to get a Solana, you're going to get an AVAX, you're going to get a, maybe you catch the second and third chapter of Axie Infinity.
Right.
What are the tools that you're using to sort of gauge that? Is it mostly social indicators? Is it charts and social, or is it just sixth sense, gut instinct? Like what is the combination, the cocktail of tools you're using to kind of be early to those moves?
Well, I always say like like anything that catches on in crypto, like the first thing that does really well, there's always going to be copies of it. Like it's just essentially how this market works. When people see one trade work really well, they're going to try and replicate that trade in whatever way they can. So when I missed most of Binance Smart Chain, like I actually was on it the first week, and I was like, these apps are horrible. I was on like Burger Swap and something else when it still had a terrible UI, and I left actually before things did really well. But later I was like, okay, if Binance Smart Chain did well, then these other L1s are also getting funded. Then they're probably going to do well also. So what I've been tracking is comparing like Ethereum and other smart contract chains, like by like a market cap to market cap basis. And I think at one point I was looking at Solana versus like AVAX versus Harmony, and Harmony was like 1 billion, and Solana at the time I think was like, I don't know, maybe like 20 something or maybe like around 30. So there's like there's a size difference, like the smaller market cap tokens. It's kind of like how majors flow down to mid caps, flow down to small caps. And the same thing happens essentially with like smart contract ecosystems. And the same thing happens with like also like the games also. So like Magic has done well recently. And that's like a lower market cap game that's kind of like following in DFK's footsteps. But so essentially, if you find like a market segment that does really well, you want to look at other projects in that market segment and see how they are similar from like a community perspective, and how early they are. So things like that, I would say, is how you don't have to be first, but if you like move fast to recognizing trends, you can capitalize really well.
Yeah, it's like there's always one thing that works kind of slightly in crypto, and then it kind of like unleashes a floodgate. And looking at Chainlink, you had how many oracles
Right.
were just booming in summer of 2020. It was Oracle mania, right? If you weren't an Oracle, then what were you doing? Your project was irrelevant. And then all of a sudden you got YFI, and then you got YFII and YFIII.
Yep, exactly.
And it was like, it got out of hand real fast, and people were really bullish. I remember people were just sending me there was no irony involved. They were like dude, you need to check out YFI. And I'm like, are you
Yeah,
are you
like
serious? Like,
yeah. So there's a point where like it gets exhausted. So just how trend like technical trends get exhausted, like market trends also get exhausted. Like in the same way we had the OHM and then we had OHM fork number one and OHM fork number two. Like at a point, the market once the market has like be like, oh, this is free money, that's when it's not free money anymore. So like the first couple iterations work, but then yeah, it eventually will die out.
and that's kind of what I've been talking about when Axie Infinity popped off and then Facebook changed their name. It was like, okay, everyone, buckle up. It's free money time.
Metaverse.
It's free
Yep.
money time.
Yep.
But also, I'm very passionate about metaverse and gaming. Anyone on my channel knows that. But also, I was saying, look, this move is not about the actual adoption of the metaverse, right? This move is totally just Axie Facebook, right? And so you had these two big data points that people were like, cool, everyone pile in. And there wasn't actually that real world effect happening.
Yep.
But I believe that that's over the next few years, one of the categories that is actually going to hold water. So I think that that's really smart, is knowing when everybody starts seeing it as free money and you're now in like the bad part where everyone's exit liquidity. That's for sure smart. So when did you look at DFK and you were like, okay, there's something genuine going on here that's worth actually, even in a market correction, being super confident in? Because as the market was collapsing, you were like, Jewel Maxwell. You were like, Jewel,
Yeah.
like everyone go look at his tweet thread. I'm sorry, but it was just like strength, right? And I
Yeah.
think everyone really admires and kind of gravitates towards strength while there's weakness in the market. And Jewel performed very, very well compared to other things. What made you so confident, right? Because usually in these types of moves, good altcoin, bad altcoin doesn't really tend to matter. All altcoins come down.
Yep. So I think that was probably early November, or maybe like early mid November. Yes, I was bearish. I was bearish Bitcoin, bearish Ethereum also. But it was like more from a technical perspective. Like I just felt like they tried to push all time high and they broke down and couldn't reclaim those highs. And like I'm technicals. Like I look at fundamentals a lot, but I'm technicals when like trading to trying to time things. So that was big for me. But the thing is that Bitcoin and Ethereum typically move much slower than like mid cap altcoins do. So even in like a market correction, like it took Bitcoin like what over 2 months to get down to where it is now. So that's like a really long time. So in those like consolidation periods where Bitcoin and Ethereum may be bearish, but they're going sideways, you want to find altcoins in the market that may have upside. So the reason I was still really bullish on Jewel back then was because of the timing of where it was. So that was like, I want to say that was prior to like Profession Quest launching. That was like right after the Tavern came out, and Heroes had like just launched, so people could just start buying things in the Tavern. So the timing was really well, and the team was delivering really well on all of their like goals. And people weren't really talking about DFK yet. So I knew we weren't at like, we may have been at euphoria on Bitcoin and Ethereum, but we weren't at euphoria on DFK from my point of view.
No, not at all. I'd never even heard of it, and so
Right.
like,
Right.
and I'd like to think I hear about things semi early. So I mean, I don't want to put you on spot if you're not prepared, but I would love to see maybe some of the inner workings, the guts of DFK, and help people understand, because I feel like something like Magic, something like DeFi Kingdoms, there's a lot of moving parts, and I feel like people sometimes get intimidated by like robust ecosystems because they can't very simplistically sort of process it, and so they don't get involved. And I say all the time, like, if you want to know what games are going to be successful, like, go play them first. And
Right. Yep.
for some reason, that is a bridge too far. Like, people just don't want to
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
spend their time. It's like, oh, you don't want to risk your entire financial future on something you've never touched. Okay, well, I guess just risk it then. But the reality is that games, I think, one of the beautiful things is you don't need any kind of training to know if a game's good. It's like, does it make you happy? Do you have dopamine rushing through your brain while you're playing it? Like these types of, like, is it fun? And so I'm wondering, are you able to show, or would you prefer to just describe? I could just okay, we're here, we're in the kingdom.
Cool. Okay, so this is DeFi Kingdoms. This is like a new account. Okay, so this profile is created. I'm gonna do the tour because this is gonna tell you essentially what everything is. So this is like what it will show you if you haven't made a profile yet. It says it can be overwhelming at first. Let me show you around. If you don't have experience with crypto or decentralized exchanges or NFTs. So this is like the tutorial the game makers created because people were having similar questions like, okay, what do I do when I get to this screen? So the first home screen is like the world map. And you can navigate as you would on any other game. Like you click different parts of the map to do different things. If you don't want to click around on the map, you can just click the menu. I think it's up here in the top right. And then the top left is like, I don't know if you saw on the last screen, that's where my character is. It'll show your jewel balance, your gold, and then your inventory for like other in-game items. Okay, so marketplace, this is the DEX, and you'll see when I click on it in a second, but this is where you trade and swap tokens.
You swap NFTs there as well?
So no, so you swap NFTs in the tavern actually. Okay. This is just for tokens. And then there's two people in the marketplace. So one is for swapping, one is for setting up your LPs, and that's this druid guy. The gardens, this is like where your liquidity pools are. They call them the gardens because it aligns with the game design and the map design. So there's different liquidity pools that you can do. You can do like Jewel AVAX or Jewel Ethereum or Jewel Harmony.
And these liquidity pools, like that AVAX that you're depositing, that's on Harmony. That's wrapped AVAX on Harmony, or
yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so you would be bridging. You can bridge whatever tokens you want through Synapse or through the Harmony bridge. And then once you're on Harmony, the RPC, then you can swap on the DEX for whatever tokens you need. Yeah, so it's the gardens. And the bank, so the bank is where you stake your jewel. I think the APR is around like 50%. But essentially you stake your jewel in the bank and then you will get paid by a percentage of all of the trading fees on the DEX within the game.
Sick.
Yeah. Tavern, so this is where the heroes are. This is where like the NFT marketplace, this is the tavern. Okay. So you can buy and sell heroes there. You can also list your heroes for rent. So heroes can summon with other heroes. If you pair two heroes together, you can summon a later generation hero. So if you have
summoning is breeding, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, breeding.
Okay.
Essentially,
because I hear you talking about summoning all the time on your Twitter. I was like, oh, he's summoning. What does that mean?
Yeah, breeding. So it's just like if I have two Gen 0 heroes, I can combine them together, spend some jewel, and I'll get a Generation 1 hero from that combination. So if you only have one hero, but you want to summon, you can rent a hero from somebody else, and you can do that, or rent out your heroes.
And what's the difference between Gen 0, Gen 1? Is it yield?
So the Generation 0 heroes have unlimited summons, and those were the heroes that were sold at the very beginning. So the first part of the game launch was the liquidity pools, and they were really high APRs because they needed people to essentially bootstrap the DEX. They didn't want to pay VCs or anybody else to do that. So they had incentivized users to do it. And then after that, the first NFT sale was like 2,000 of the Gen Zeros. And all of the heroes in the game come from these Gen Zeros. So if you breed these Gen Zeros together, you summon other heroes, and then those heroes can summon other heroes. So the difference between Gen 0, Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, as you go on, the later generations, it costs more to summon. And they also have a capped amount of summons. So Gen 1, the cap is 10. Gen 2, the cap is 9. And so they get less summons as you go higher in the generations.
Got it. So it's less breeding, but the actual function of the Gen 1 to Gen 2 or whatever is equal.
It's the same. Yep.
Cool.
They function the same.
That's an interesting design choice. A lot of times they make the earlier generations more OP, but that's probably better. More sustainable long term to have all heroes more or less equal.
Yeah, so there's different tiers of heroes. So there's common, there's uncommon, there's rare, there's legendary, and there's mythic, but that applies to all generations. So there are different levels, but it's not by generation.
And it's an equal chance no matter which generation breeds, you can get a legendary or whatever, same odds.
Yep. So I think mythics, like the more rare your hero is, the higher chance they have of summoning other rare heroes.
Oh, really? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So two mythics have a higher chance of summoning like mythics, legendaries, rares than two commons do. I believe the chance for a mythic from two commons is like 2%. It's really low.
Mhm.
And then two mythics, I think it's higher, probably like 6 or 7.
Cool.
And it's also higher for like other rares. So professions, this is like the quests that the heroes do. You've probably seen me like posting the gold mining or like fishing or foraging, stuff like that all the time. So heroes have the ability to summon other heroes, and they also have the ability to do quests. And when you do quests, you get experience, and that's how you level up your hero.
And what is
Um,
a quest? You just send them out on chain, you pay a transaction, and they're on a quest. Is that what it is?
yeah, so I can actually let me see. I can probably show you in a bit, but yeah, so you will. I can show you the in a second, but yeah, so there's like fishing and foraging. Fishing is near a well that they've set up on the map. You click your hero, and they'll complete that quest for a certain amount of time. After they're done doing the quest, you'll get the rewards and they'll get the XP for it. Okay, so this is the portal. This is where you summon new heroes, and yeah, that's everything, I think. So let's see. Okay. Okay, so I sent this account some Jewel. Let's go to the tavern. Let's see if I can. Okay, so this is like the marketplace. On the left here is like all the different types of heroes. Like if I wanted to do archers, here are the archers. If I wanted to look at wizards, here are the wizards.
And what's the difference between an archer and a wizard? Like,
So each class, I can pull up the. Actually, let me see.
it's okay if you don't know offhand. I'm just trying to like get the information out there because these little things, as silly as it is, I feel like people get intimidated by all
Yeah.
of these different sort of designations.
So yeah, so there's eight base classes, which is the archer, the knight, monk, pirate, priest, warrior, wizard, thief. And these eight classes, they each have different strengths. So like thieves, if you've played, I don't know if you've played like MMOs, like RPGs. So they all have like different stats. Obviously, warriors have like more strength, like more health, while wizards have like more intelligence, more wisdom, which is like better for casting spells and doing magic damage and stuff like that. And then
And when you send
archers,
them out on quests, this impacts how successful they are on their quest. Is that what it is?
yeah, so like archers are better at foraging, warriors are better at mining,
Mm-hmm.
and then like wizards and priests are better at gardening, and things like that. And then in the future, this will make like a big difference in PvP. Like certain heroes will be able to do different things. So all right, let's see if I can buy. Let's see. So this is you have to approve like spending of your jewel. And this guy, so this is like the stats and the professions. As you can see, this guy is like a gardening main, which means he gets extra bonuses if he does gardening quests. And then these are his stats. Yeah, so essentially, like there are eight base classes, and then there are also advanced classes, and then there are elite classes, and then there's like an exalted class. So like certain combinations of heroes have a chance to summon an advanced class. So you see here like this ninja, like this guy has a chance to get summoned by a monk and a pirate, and then like this dark knight, these guys can only be summoned, well, primarily like the higher chance to get summoned by archers and thieves.
So if I was starting out and I
Mm-hmm.
was, one of the big concerns with these types of games is that effectively the first, 12 people come in and they're absolute barons. And then, the next 1,000 people are exit liquidity, right?
Right.
And they kind of like are constantly playing catch up. Do you think DFK has like, is going to suffer from a similar syndrome there of having the early movers kind of just completely monopolize? And if you were a new player, how would you sort of get your foot in the door on something like DFK? Where would you start?
So if I were a new player, I probably would focus on the gardens and get maybe one hero just to figure out how to like to do the quests and stuff. So for me, like if I'm thinking long term, what's gonna be the highest ROI is gonna be these heroes that are really leveled up past everybody else. So when you first summon a hero, they're level 1. but the more time you spend during quests, they're going to level up further. So like the cap is level 100, but it takes a long time to get to level 100. So like eventually the heroes, when PvP eventually rolls out in the future, like if the whales that want to join the game later are going to want to buy the strongest hero. So if you're leveling up heroes now, you're going to have an advantage later in the future.
And the level cap honestly seems like a nice feature because it stops people from just keeping their lead, right? At a certain point, your lead gets cut because you just have to start over again. And so you might have multiple level 100s,
Right.
but someone could still catch up to you eventually, right?
Yeah, like you can't really buy your way to the top in this game because you have to like spend time playing. And the good thing is like whenever you summon a new hero, they start at level 1. So but yeah, if I was starting, I probably would focus on the gardens because like you want to get the high APR from that, and then also staking in the bank, which is just like single side holding jewel essentially.
Yeah, obviously the impermanent loss I feel like is very scary to people. Putting in a certain amount of tokens and then having it be completely different when you pull it out.
Yeah.
I've suffered impermanent loss on, I can't tell you mathematically that I fully understand how the impermanent loss equation works. I just know I've added liquidity sometimes to a pair that's gone parabolic. And when I pull it out, I feel like I had less of that than I put it
Exactly.
in at
Yeah.
the highs. And I was like, how did I lose money adding lick at the bottom? Like, I don't
Right.
know. But so that's why impermanent loss always scares me a little bit. But yeah, so starting at the gardens and then trying to get a hero and then grinding, right? That was sort of
Yeah.
your synopsis?
Yeah, that's what I would say. I would say like so the combination of the gardens and the bank, because the bank obviously has no impermanent loss. So like if you want more upside of the jewel token individually, then you obviously go heavier in the bank. But for me, it's balanced out playing the gardens and also doing the bank.
So, as far as like initial buy-in, what do you think's like the minimum amount of like dollars that you would need to kind of get set up here? And what are yields kind of like in this game? What is a sort of, average yield that you've experienced over the last few months? Obviously there's going to be good times where it's going burr and then it's early. But now that things are sort of, I think a couple months in, what do you think is realistic expectations for someone that might want to get set up here?
I really don't think there's like a certain amount of money that you need. I would say like if you want to buy a hero, the floor is around $300 right now. But if you're just playing it as a trade, you don't really need to have a certain amount of money to play the game other than getting a hero, because the hero is like the majority of the like questing and leveling and that aspect. So that's around 300. If you want to get like a stronger hero, then obviously you'll spend more. Um, but just like you would buy like a certain amount of Uniswap, like whatever portfolio allocation you would do for that, I would say you can do the same for Jewel.
Yeah, Jewel, you can get into for quite cheap. What is like the yields like on the whole ecosystem? So say you have a hero,
I can
you're
look.
in the gardens. What kind of yield are people looking at, and is that split? And like, what is the split between Jewel and other stuff?
Yeah, so here's what the gardens look like right now. So currently there's 130 million in the bank, and then 400, it looks like 400 million in these gardens. So it looks like the average APR is around 300 right now. As you can see, it's lower for the more popular pools because more people are in them. So AVAX is like 255 percent, while like Jewel Miz, which is a less popular token, is 375%.
Mm-hmm.
So these pools have a certain reward allocation based, like the team decided, and they try and keep them like pretty even. So the biggest pool is the Jewel Harmony pool, has 160 million, while like the Jewel AVAX pool only has 30 million, but it still is pretty similar APR because of how the rewards are distributed.
And that makes sense, right? Because you're on Harmony, so like the native token's always going to be quite popular. Where are
Right.
you? I mean, if you're comfortable sharing, where are you mostly allocated in the gardens? Just so people understand. You don't have to share it if you don't want to.
No, it's cool. I'm actually mostly in Jewel One right now. I've been in that pool for a while. But I would say that Jewel AVAX is probably going to be the strongest pool coming up because the Crystal Veil expansion is coming in about probably like a month or so. I think they're aiming for like towards the end of February. And I say Jewel AVAX because the Crystal Veil expansion is essentially DFK's first expansion to a new chain. So this DEX exists on Harmony, but there's going to be another DEX that exists on AVAX, and then in the future there will be other DEXs that exist on other chains. So I think a lot of people are going to try and play the Crystal Veil launch the way that people did this DFK, this early DFK launch on Harmony, but there's going to be a lot more eyes on it, obviously. So
it does feel like that's potentially, if you were looking to get into this ecosystem, timing a new chain is quite an interesting moment, because everybody knows Trader Joe. I was covering Trader Joe all throughout Q3 and 4, and but obviously the upside, and once everybody knows about something like Joe, I felt like Joe was kind of like the darling of the altcoins on AVAX, because it just made sense. You're like, all right, here's the DEX, let's go. Kind of like Sunday Swap on Cardano right now, or something like that. But yeah, so that's an awesome opportunity coming up to get involved early. And yeah, like you said, there's going to be more eyes on it, so diminishing returns, but also diminished risk, right? When we know that a bunch of people are going to rush in and add liquidity, then you're like, okay, we're moving with the people right now. How interesting will it be if something like this supplants like a Trader Joe and starts to get more volume than a Trader Joe? What would that say about the model?
I think it would say how successful it is. I do think that a lot of people are going to be on the DEX early. The way that they're going to reward people on this AVAX expansion is in this new token called Crystal. So Crystal is essentially going to be the power token of the AVAX expansion, similarly to how Jewel is the power token for Harmony. But to get this Crystal, since they want to bring value back to Jewel, you're going to have to single side stake Jewel to get Crystal at the beginning.
Got it.
So yeah, I think a lot of people are gonna rush the DEX really hard, because they've said that the majority of the supply is gonna get, that's how it's gonna be initially distributed.
Yeah, great, smart, and makes total sense.
Yeah.
But even so, here in 2022, how many people have, kind of tuned out already, and how many people are not here that were here 2.5 months ago? I think while there's probably going to be a bunch of smart whales and people like you who just get it, I think there's probably going to be there's probably huge opportunity there still, right? Maybe not, because now we're going to have the EllioTrades army on it, but the reality is that most people are kind of lazy, and most people kind of they don't do the, like you said, you had a tweet that really stuck with me when you said essentially doing annoying things that other people won't is like the big alpha for 2021 and 2. It feels like that's still just very much the case.
It still is. Like I there's a lot of people that still ask me every day, like, what is Crystal Veil? Like, what is that? And I've been tweeting about it like for months. Like I've pretty much been pretty straightforward with what I think is going to happen there. But yeah, I agree. I think that the time to be looking for new opportunities, like, you have an advantage when prices are down, because when prices are down, people are not paying as much attention to stuff as they were when everything was just like bullish and everything was up only. So you kind of have an advantage there if you're willing to do the extra work when people really aren't paying attention.
So here we are. It's almost February. The market, everyone's a macro analyst, right? Everyone's a Fed expert, right? Everyone's a regulation expert. Everyone's quite sure about the bearish trend. Where are you looking, and like where do you think like the most valuable time spent right now is in the market? A lot of people are just saying, just wait for things to come back, wait for the narrative to shift. I'm personally spending, I predicted that when the market got boring, NFTs would boom again. That's happening, and I think still people are like wildly underestimating NFTs right now. That's my personal belief. But
Yep.
the reality is that if NFTs go to zero, you probably would feel like everyone who bought these was pretty dumb and probably deserved to go to zero. So it's hard for me to like put a flag in the ground and go like, these are the new Bitcoin. Like, of course it's hugely risky, right? Hugely risky. Yet it still makes sense to me. I'm curious what you think is like the right way to be thinking about the market, sort of while Orange Coin might be kind of being held down by macro pressures.
I think so I'll say that you want to be, as I said before, you want to be looking forward to like what trends could happen in the future that aren't like very much accessible right now. And I've been really bullish on Cosmos for this year, but I think the overarching trend is scaling and like modularity versus monolithic chains. So I would be doing research on that if I were somebody who is more like passive and is trying to wait and time the market later. Like if you're concerned with macro conditions and stocks, I think you want to be looking for, okay, if I don't want to be all in the market right now, well, I know crypto's not going away. So what are the developers working on right now? What's going to be happening next year? Like what's going to be happening in 6 months? What are people going to be talking about then that they may not be talking about right now? And I would say one big thing there is definitely modularity versus is monolithic chains.
What in like a very short explanation for us smooth brains over here, does that mean?
So monolithic essentially is what most layer one smart contract ecosystems are right now. Which means that they do consensus and data availability. They're also the settlement layer, and they also do execution. So what Ethereum is pivoting towards, they're pivoting towards a more modular architecture. They want to move essentially all of the execution to rollups. And then they want Ethereum to be like the data availability and the settlement layer. So a lot of these new layer ones believe that because they don't have the, what's the word? Like the restrictions that Ethereum did in the beginning, that they'll be able to scale as just one chain that can do everything, like Solana and AVAX. AVAX more or less so because they're kind of focusing on subnets also. But yeah, I'll say that's the main trend. So modularity is essentially like breaking apart what blockchains do into separate layers.
Okay. Modularity, everyone, word of the day. Definitely learn it. And I thank you for that because I've certainly not been focusing on that. Definitely on scalability, like ZK Sync, ZK Rollup seem to be a pretty undeniable next layer, or all rollups to that degree. But modular blockchains, I will definitely put on my list to go deep on. Any final words for the audience about just crypto or life or things that have helped you in general sort of navigate this crazy world?
What would I say? I say my best advice is to try everything. So like when you like you said earlier, what I tweeted, when it's like extra steps to do stuff and you're like, oh, I'll do that later. And then you really never get to it. Don't be that person that's like the last person to do something when you knew about it beforehand. Because a lot of people knew what Binance Smart Chain was, never used it. A lot of people knew about Solana, ignored it. A lot of people knew about DFK, ignored it. A lot of people still, I know like old traders like that have been in crypto for a long time, they still really only care about Bitcoin and Ethereum. And there's so much opportunity in crypto right now, especially if you're like a smaller investor, a smaller trader, that if you're active on chain and you're really looking for the next big thing, then you can catch it before a lot of other people do. So I would say try everything, be active. Don't get complacent.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the walkthrough on DFK, market analysis in general. Everybody check out Ansem on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem, man.
I hope all of you enjoyed that. Please go follow Ansem on Twitter. He's absolutely dropping knowledge bombs. Again, everyone has their good days and bad days, but in general, I've been learning a lot from this guy. So give him some love on Twitter. Again, a big thank you to him for showing up. And if you like the video, like the video. As always, I'm EllioTrades. You can find me on Twitter at EllioTrades. Link is also in the description, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode.